day and night.
Chase your tail light. I'll be under your skin, letting you go for a while. Then I'm taking you in. Your face like diamonds, a glimmer and punch. Shiny predator with a golden gun. Space age girl machine. 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 Space age girl machine.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Batgirl herself, the heiress to Batman, Miss Athena Finger.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is probably the most exciting interview I've done. So I'm super stoked
I'm
right now.
glad I could bring some excitement.
I came across your story in 2015. I actually had, we call it an amputation revision. I just call it cutting my leg off again. But
Oh no.
and I was, in bed because really couldn't be anywhere else. And I just had my tablet and I'm flipping through Hulu and I see this documentary. It says Batman and Bill. Well, I consider myself, a huge comic nerd. I like to think I know quite a bit about this stuff. I didn't have the first shitting idea what the hell they were talking. Who's Bill? Who's Bill? So I start watching, and immediately my heart just breaks. Like I got goosebumps right now, reliving that moment. That, I mean, as a bit of a creative myself, I actually published a book in 2006.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's okay.
You put your creation out there. That's awesome.
Oh, okay. Well, it's over here. It's behind Spider-Man. Well, it's by the Batman Ramen Bowl.
Okay.
It's called Vampire Slayer: One Foot in Darkness. It was my one superhero, and it was really about being a young girl in a very small Midwestern town growing up disabled.
Okay.
So I just killed
That's
everybody.
awesome. Yeah,
But
the guys who put it out there. So mad respect.
oh, I was so young. I just had my third kid, and
So
but
people create things and they never put it out there because they're afraid of rejection. So to overcome that is amazing. So kudos.
it's very hard to do.
It is.
I dare say that starting my YouTube channel was harder because
It's you. It's all you. Unless you're talking about other people's stories and not using your face, right? I mean,
yeah. But hearing what happened to him, that he created this unfathomably impressive character and story. He gave so much joy and life lessons and escape to children and people, millions, billions all over the world. He changed
generations.
history, and it was stolen from him. I mean, when you create something, and you know this, you're an artist and you're a mother. Your creations are your children. When you create something, it's very real to you. It's alive. And to know that opportunity was stolen from him, and not just him, but your father and you and your son. It just right in front of me. Just
it's heart-wrenching when you hear the truth of what was going on behind the scenes. Um, Unfortunately, he wasn't the only one. There were a lot of men in the industry back then that were taken full advantage of. But, they also didn't expect things to last for 80 plus years. And,
Exactly.
you know, they were looked down upon in just the publishing writing industry because they wrote those funny books.
Hmm.
So there was a lot going on at the time with the industry and the way it was looked at. So I think that also had to put, a lot to play in the story. Because we think about it now and we're like, well, that's completely wrong. But what did they know? It was a brand new industry.
They yeah, I just, it infuriates me so bad that just because something's new, you know,
I know,
all,
I'm justifying it.
yeah, like that.
Well, I mean, again, it was such a different time.
Hmm.
Um, and there were industry norms even then. So it's just a matter of the fact that he wasn't given the opportunity to even say yes or no.
Right. And the one time that it did come out when Jerry Bales, sent that 2-page article to
Yeah.
every Batman fan he could find, Bob Kane comes out and he's like, no, he's a liar. Lying
Yep.
liar, liar pants. Nah. It I'm just gonna say it right now and I'll cut out whatever you want me to, but
You
I
can have your
cannot
opinion.
stand Bob Kane. I cannot stand him. And every time I would hear any interview with him saying, just send it to where the angels are. I'm looking down on my creation. I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, I know. It's just painful. I mean, it really is too bad that he made his story became a villain story, and it could
Yeah,
have been something so much more than that. But that's what he wanted. He wanted the fame and the to live the lie, basically.
exactly.
That's what he wanted.
One of the one of my favorite parts of the Batman and Bill documentary is that they included Todd McFarlane in that. And if any comic book nerd out there knows anything about Todd McFarlane other than Spawn, it's that thanks to him and Jack Kirby and several others, we now have the Creator Bill of Rights. Creators
Mhm.
now can retain the ownership
Yeah.
of that creation. And Todd McFarlane was a man who created a character as a teenager. He actually did that. So when to have him on camera talking about Bob Kane and saying, yeah, it's full of shit. It's like magnificent.
He's
Magnificent.
really nice too. I got to meet him briefly at San Diego Comic-Con this past year. Real brief. I mean, he's such a super popular person. He always has tons of people waiting to meet him and stuff. But he was very gracious, took a moment. I introduced who I was. He was like, yes, you mean the true creator of Batman? And I was like, oh, you're awesome.
So cool. When was the first time that you remember hearing about who your grandfather was and what he did? Because I know he died right before you were born.
Mhm.
But when was the first time you remember hearing someone talk about that?
Um, I mean, I was young. I want to say maybe kindergarten age, if I can remember. I mean, I don't really remember a time not knowing about it, but
Hmm.
obviously, when you're really little, you don't really understand or comprehend the stories
Hmm.
until you see the magnitude of what the story really is.
Yeah,
As you mature, you're like, oh, yeah, okay. But yeah, really, I don't remember a time that I didn't know, but obviously, I'm sure I was pretty young when I first found out.
and what was that like? Like, was it just like, oh yeah, my grandpa created Batman? Mm.
I mean, when you're young, you kind of I mean, I was also very sheltered and naive when I was so it was like, "Oh, okay, we have this really cool connection." And of course, you I was explained a little more and I understood as I got a little older. What I mean by older is like 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. Um, the importance of what he had done. Um growing up in the 80s is very different than growing up now because you have
True
everything at the ready
story.
for information. So it
Mhm.
was kind of like I have this really cool connection, but I can't really prove it.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, well, I have this really, I'm gonna believe my parents. I'm not gonna like not believe them.
Mhm.
But it was hard if you want to tell your family story to people who are of, 8, 9 years old, and you don't have a piece of paper that documents the history like we have now.
Yeah.
It was a little rough. So it was something that, I kind of learned to be selective to tell the story to. Um, just because I didn't want to have to hear that I was lying or have to explain why I don't have $1 million or any of that stuff that kids would
Yeah.
associate with a
How come you
character
don't
as
live in the
large
Bat
as
Cave?
Batman.
Here's your Batmobile. I
Yeah,
don't see
exactly. Why
Robin.
aren't you living? I got a lot of, why aren't you living in Hollywood then? And I'm like, what does that have to do with Batman?
Why
Like,
would you want to?
yeah, it's like, kids are weird. Kids say things, they don't really know what they're talking about.
This is very true. And when you first realized, 'cause I know your parents went to several lawyers trying to get your grandfather the credit.
As I was told, yeah. I mean, I believe it because when the '89 movie came out, it kind of like opened up all of that again. And unfortunately, my dad was very ill. He had
Mhm.
HIV, so he passed away in '92. The movie came out in '89, so it wasn't very much time between him realizing that his life was coming to an end and seeing this big reminder of, his dad not getting the credit and trying to make this last push during the '89 frenzy of the Batman movie coming out. And it just got to a point on where he had to stop.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, not being of wealth and not having the legal connections that it would require to take on a large corporation or publication at the time. You just get to a point at where you have to say, well, there's nothing more I can really do at this point. So, he was in communication with DC publications and all that stuff throughout the years, especially once Paul Lovitz took over and started honoring some of these golden age writers and artists with royalties and things like that. So, I mean, he really did try to maintain that connection in any way that he could to keep his dad's story kind of relevant and be like, hey,
Yeah.
you still have this issue to deal with. So, I mean, unfortunately, I was very young when it fell upon me. I was just before my 16th birthday when my dad passed away. So I wasn't even at an age on where I could really even think about maneuvering and understanding even how to approach something that massive.
Speaking as a former 16-year-old girl, I can definitely say that you just exactly, I mean, you weren't chemically capable of
No, and
comprehending.
I wasn't really in the full know of everything either. So, I had limited knowledge of what was going on behind the scenes as far as like what exactly is the case and things like that. I didn't really start learning that until I got a little bit older and can understand the situation a little more. So,
And when you were getting older and, you're seeing Batman Beyond, Batman the Animated Series, the Batman movies that no nerd likes to discuss. Thank you, Arnold. Thank you. What the fuck? You start seeing these things. What emotion did that stir up in you? I mean, it had to be extremely conflicting, especially as someone that does like this sort of stuff.
well, in the '90s, I was still a teenager. I was in high
Mhm.
school. when the animated series came out and Batman Beyond and all that awesome stuff. And when the 89 movie came out, I was in the 8th grade. So 7th, 8th grade was that summer between 7th and 8th. So, I mean, I was still like coming into the whole art side of it because I was on track to go to art school. So I was really fascinated about a lot of the stuff that they were doing with the animation and things like that. So it didn't really cause an issue. The thing that would bother me the most is I would go into comic shops and be like, "Oh, okay, let's see if they have any, whatever." And I go over to the person just working behind the counter, me thinking it's the person that owns the place, and be like, "Hey, do you know who Bill Finger is?" And they're like, "Who?" And I'm like, "Why are you working in a comic shop if you don't know who Bill Finger is?" And they're like, "Well, who
Right.
is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, well."
Green Lantern for one. Thank you.
Yeah, and like no, I have no idea. So it was things like that that would bother me more. Um Once I started teaching at the college, that's really when it started to be upsetting for me. I was kind of in the throes of communications. I started teaching at the college in 2011. So this was many years after I had already connected with Mark Nobleman and, started my relationship with DC in 2008. So there was a little bit of connection going on at that time. So a lot of stuff had been kind of reopened for me as far as like a lot of the family trauma that I had going on that I never dealt with. So when I started teaching, obviously college or high school, any school you go to, you're going to have tons of Batman stuff everywhere. Tons. Backpacks, notebooks, tattoos, t-shirts, sweaters, yeah, everything with the bat logo. And that's when it starts really like was a constant reminder of this massive thing that I needed to resolve. And that's what it was. It was like
God saying, hey,
yeah,
do that thing.
yeah. And Mark had to push me to make that connection with DC. I was really hesitant because DC knew who I was, and I had contacted them a couple times throughout the years after my father passed, just to be like, "Hey, like, what can we do?" Sorry, my phone is responding to nothing. Anyway, thanks. You know who you are. I'm not going to say your name.
Shut up, bitch. And then she'll tell me that's not very nice.
But I watched that to me the other day in the middle of a session with a student. And he's like, "What was that?" I'm like, "That's my watch. It's listening to me." Shut up.
My boyfriend won't allow a lot of that stuff in the house because he's like, the government listens enough.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You should listen to him. He's smart.
God, I'm glad he's not in here to hear you say that. Sorry.
That was adorable.
My grandma lives in Florida, and I called her right before we, popped on. And I said, "Oh, Grandma, guess who I'm talking to?" She's like, "Oh, that's wonderful. Did you say she's in Florida? You should tell her to come visit." I'm like, "Okay."
We're in Florida.
She lives in the Villages. She's been there since 1998, since they opened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's not far from me, though. That's like 45 minutes.
Are you kidding me? Well, I'll just have to come see you when I go down there next year.
Sure. We'll have a lunch date.
Sounds great to me. I hope you like beer.
I'm actually a martini drinker. Beer makes me feel
Are you
very
kidding
good.
me? Do you like them dirty, like your rents due tomorrow?
Yeah, I like it light dirty. I don't like it when it's too good.
You and I just became best friends. I don't know how else to break the news to you. I fucking love martinis. And my grandmother will drunk dial me at least once a week and say, "Sure wish you were here to make me a martini."
Oh, that's adorable. I love it. She sounds like a lot of fun.
She's awesome. She's really awesome. And honestly, she's like the mom figure in my life. When I heard you talking about the issues in your family, you had said you felt like there was a curse in your family of being left out of things. And I related to that so much that I started crying. Like it,
Oh,
my my dad is still living, but he's never really been around. I had a younger brother and he had this new family and everything went towards him, and then my brother actually passed uh almost 10 years ago. And I remember walking into the memorial and there was this dais, where they put up all the pictures, and there was a picture of my brother and my dad and stepmother and the dog and with my cousins, with my grandfather, none of me.
oh no.
And then I'm walking around, there's probably 150, 200 people there. My brother was a wonderful human and, very, very loved. None of them knew he had a sister. They
That's
didn't tell
bizarre.
anybody. And when I was hearing about you got left out of this closure you needed with your father, you've been left out of the legacy of your grandfather, like I felt for you. It, like, I can't understand it on that magnitude, but in my way, I
Mhm.
do. I raised my kids by myself. My parents missed their entire childhoods. They were never around.
That's so sad.
It's well, I mean, it's
I'm
over now.
sure there's reasons for it, and I'm not going to ask, but still, that's so sad that
Their reasons,
there's no
they
connection
just were
for the
they
kids
just weren't
with their
interested.
grandparents.
Yeah, they just weren't
I didn't
interested.
have the best relationship with my mother, but I made sure that my son still had a connection with his only living grandparent, blood grandparent.
Yeah,
I
and I
felt
have
that was
tried that.
very important.
My daughter you just met, her father died 2 months ago.
Oh no.
And yeah, and yeah, it's been a crazy year. Um, but he and I, even though we dated a week and a half, I got pregnant on birth control. The child is meant to be here.
Okay.
Um, and we did not get along at all. We really disliked each other, but we got along as parents.
Right. That's the important thing.
Yes. And I remember thinking, why was this so hard for my parents? It
It's a
doesn't,
generational thing because my
it's
mom had
gotta
a hard
be.
time
It's gotta
with
be
some of the
because
choices and some of the advice that she
yeah,
would provide.
yeah. I mean,
Not necessarily followed.
right. We we parented together, the four of us as a team. Her dad, stepmother, me, her stepdad. We would in person sit together in a living room, talk about, okay, this is what we're gonna do, this is how it's gonna go. And then he passed, and I remember thinking, I'm just so grateful
No,
that
that's super important.
yeah, I'm
Again, I definitely supported the relationship between my son and his father, even though we got divorced and I couldn't stand being around him.
Musicians will do that to you, won't they?
Yes, they will. And I dated several, and I married one. So yeah, who's the dummy now?
Was was he a bass player?
No, he was a drummer
Oh,
and he played guitar and he sang, he wrote music. He was a lifelong musician though. He was a professional in Chicago in the 70s and the 80s. He was
so
much
was my dad.
yeah. So I made sure that they still had a relationship. I mean, he was a good dad, so I didn't want to take that away. I knew what it was like to have a parent removed from the situation,
Right.
limited access to that person. It really sucks, and I didn't want that kind of trauma for my son. So I disregarded some of the advice.
And would
Again,
you say
such a generational thing because if you think it was not well during the 80s it was, but a lot of the time all the kids went to the mom, right? And the mom would go off and the dad would maybe get to see them, on the weekends. And like that whole mentality was still kind of like trickling over into our generation,
yeah,
of
yeah,
like, no, we're supposed to be co-doing this. Like,
yeah, there's a reason why it
iron
takes two
together.
babies. Well, and I always felt like, and I know you can relate to this, but I always felt like, that affects your identity, not knowing where the people that made you came from.
It does. It leaves a big question mark in your life. Unfortunately, I didn't get to know my grandfather, so when people ask, "Oh, so how was he?" and I'm like, they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, I wasn't even a concept for 2 years after he passed away." So they're like, "Oh," I'm like, "Yeah, he was very young. He was just before his 60th birthday, and that's the story. There's nothing else to say. I mean, I've learned more in the last, geez, 14 years now, almost 15. Coming into this with Mark kind of reopening the story for me, at least, and kind of pushing me to like learn more about my family, and not just Bill, but just like
Mhm.
my family in general. Like I've connected with cousins that I didn't know I had because I thought Bill was an only child, but he has siblings that he was estranged from.
Are you kidding?
One of his sisters actually only lived about half an hour away from me outside of Fort Lauderdale. And like Mark tried to facilitate us meeting so I could meet my great aunt. And like that, she's like, I want nothing to do with Bill, anything. Like I was crushed, but I was like,
That's
what?
devastating. That's
It
devastating.
was really sad. But I mean, again, I've gotten to meet so many people who knew Bill also that were still alive when I came into this, almost 10 years ago, coming into the public scene. So, like, I got to meet Bill's best friend that was, working with him on movies and TV shows. Um, they were very close. Actually, Charles is the person who
Charles.
found him. Um, so, I mean, I got to meet some other people that knew him. Paul Lovitz, who was the president and publisher of DC when I met him back in 2008. He was like, Bill was my mentor. Because, I mean, Bill worked for DC up until he passed away. So, I mean, he had a 30-year career almost with DC. So, he knew a lot of the people that were working in the office in the early 70s, in the late 60s. So that was like all the new blood coming in that was taking over and creating, the silver age with, Neil coming in and taking over, and Denny O'Neil, and like
Yeah,
that
I
whole
got a bone to
shift
pick
that
with
was
Danny
coming.
O'Neil about Wonder Woman. What he did in 1968 with that white cat suit, he knows he messed up. Like, he knows it. Gloria Steinem wouldn't let him breathe until he fixed it. I,
But so it was nice to be able to connect with these people
yeah.
who had some kind of connection with him. Either they met him, or they worked with him, or they were friends with him. I didn't even know that he had remarried. So when I met his second wife, that was like, wow, I have a grandmother that I didn't even know about. Like,
You owe me a lot of Christmas cards with $5, lady.
so I mean, it was just like, for me, it was a discovery of a whole side of my family that I knew nothing about. So I mean, that was a real positive side of the whole, like, coming into the story and taking on the giants.
Yeah. I mean, back then it was just Warner Brothers in DC. I can't imagine. I mean, I know you were apprehensive at first, and I don't blame you. And I was telling badass mama that I said, at one point they email her and they're like, "Hey girl, hey, just saying what's up. How about you just sign this for me so I can give you a check? Okay, bye."
Yeah.
And you look over the paperwork and it's like, you promise that you won't pursue this ever again, and we'll give you this nice little check.
Oh,
And
it
you
was
had the
like a pen.
strength of character to be like, nah, that that is
Well,
so tough.
I had a strategy. I had lawyers. My sister's a lawyer, so she took on the legal
And
side,
a freaking
obviously.
smart one too.
Yeah, well, she had some really good connections when she was in law school. She actually focused in copyright law, so she had a lot of people that she had connected with in the school, so she was able to tap back into that connection
It's
once we
it's
were
like
ready.
it was all just kind of falling into
Yeah.
place for you to come along and be like, it stops right here.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I mean, she wasn't from the beginning. I had a different attorney for 5 years before she came to me and said, "This isn't working. Like, we need to do something else, and you're running out of time." And that was the other thing. You only have so much time to make a claim. You have 75 plus 3 years. I came into the public eye in 2014. That was the
Yeah.
75th anniversary. I had 3 years to resolve this. That's it. And so I was like, well, we need to do something because I'm not going to live with the doubt for the rest of my life. Win or lose, I got to do something. So that's where, she was like, yeah, well, let's go for it. And so she was able to help me with that. And I, being not of the legal mind, but became, the face of the campaign, and went on, the PR side of it, and started going to conventions and doing interviews and doing things that I've never done before in my life, and trying to tell the story um with more knowledge than I knew before. I mean, before it was like, yeah, my grandfather created Batman and,
That's
the
all I
other
got.
characters, and that's about it. That's all I know, really. It's like yeah, that's the end of the story. But no, I mean, coming into it and learning a lot more about, like, I mean, I didn't know he did Green Lantern. I had no idea that he was, created Wildcat, that he wrote for Marvel and did all these other really cool things. Like, I had no idea.
He
Again,
created almost a
was
100 characters.
15. My grandmother died before, Bill's first wife. She passed away when I was still a teenager. So it's like I didn't have anyone to go to. I didn't have anyone. There was no one. I mean, I knew that my dad had a couple cousins on my grandmother's side, and that was about it. It was like, and I don't even talk to them. So it was kind of like, I'm just here trying to figure it out. And people were really kind of nice about filling in the gaps, which helped with pursuing the case and connecting with real comic historians who can kind of help untangle this mess a little bit. I strategically came off one way when dealing with people in the industry, especially when it came to, like, legal stuff. I kind of played dumb. Like, I didn't know what was going on in the scene. And it kind of worked out for me because we were able to just kind of have me not be consumed with the legal side of it. I could just be the one that tells the story and brings awareness to the situation. So, it was all a big chess game. You really had to be careful about where you move those pieces
I'm
and
terrible
which
at
ones
chess.
you remove and which ones you add. So, I mean, we were very fortunate that a lot of the right people came together, and we were able to get some kind of positive resolution here. I mean, that
Well, and
was the goal.
not just not just changing, well, let's you change the world, because this just had a ripple effect everywhere. And I'm sure this gave DC and Marvel pause to be like, okay, so next time someone comes in and they say, hey, I created this, I want my name on it, we should probably do that. But not only how it changed comic history and creative history, this gave resolution and rest to your family history.
It did. And to go back to what you were saying, like, I did refer to it as that stormy cloud that kind of follows you around, and it's there, but you try to ignore it. But once in a while the rain hits you and reminds you that it's still looming behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to be able to have the resolution so it didn't get passed on to another generation. My son, he was at the right age when I started my public relations. He would come with me and he started to realize the significance of what we were trying to do. He had similar experiences when he was in like the first and second grade, where students were, he would tell his classmates, hey, my great grandfather was the co creator and like all this cool stuff. Because he was learning more as I was learning more, as he was, learning his way in the world. I was trying to figure out all of this stuff going on with my family. And so, of course, he was super excited and wanted to share it. And of course, they were like, yeah, you're lying. Kids.
Yeah.
Then Mark's book came out and he's like, no, look, see, there's book.
I have something
Look,
tangible.
So he was able to get some validation also, even though at that point we didn't have the byline. We were still fighting for that. And so, now he doesn't have to worry about explaining that part of his family history at all. Like, it's not, you Google it and it comes up, and it's something that I have been anticipating and wanting for a very long time. Because even when you, it's so stupid.
No, please.
But
I
even
love
when I was
stupid.
like younger in my teenage years, the Encyclopedia Britannica, and you look up historical figures, or even like the Who's Who books. You remember those?
Yes.
Yeah, and I would always be searching to see if Bill was in there, and he would never be in there. And that's like, and now it's like he's everywhere, and that's that's so awesome. But I mean, not just for closure for the family, but just to have Bill's true story put out there, because what he did was so significant in the industry that people had no idea, and that's not fair to the fans to not know the true history of not just Batman but of the industry. Yeah, it's not pretty, but it is what it is, and that's where all of these characters came from. That's like
I have this love-hate relationship with DC. I really do. I love that they're this big part of my childhood, this big part of my daily life now, but I hate what they did to people. I hate what they did to people.
Well, and not to justify what they're doing, but I mean, the industry was born out of mobsters. It did not come out of a wholesome place. Gangsters were the reason
porno and gangsters.
I'm serious. That's where it came from. They had to launder money somewhere, somehow. And so paper was the commodity that they were laundering. And that's where comics came from. It's not a pretty history. They actually stole it from somebody else.
Well, don't let Frederick Wortham hear you from beyond the grave, because then he's going to feel totally justified about seduction of the innocent. We're not emotionally or mentally prepared to deal with that.
But I'm just saying, like, to not know the true history is really not a justice to anybody who really is a comic fan. I mean, we want to know everything about every celebrity and pick apart every book and every whatever. To not have an accurate representation of where this came from is not something that I wanted to leave out there.
And that was completely agree with you. That is, he who does not know his history is doomed to repeat it. If we don't know the truth of what brought us these wonderful toys, then chances are it's going to happen to somebody else, and you know how that feels.
Unfortunately.
But it really does give me chills to think that you and Mark's work gave your father and your grandfather rest. It was like you completed their unfinished business. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal.
It was, and I knew at the time the magnitude of it when I got into like actually fully pursuing. You know, I had to get through a lot of the emotional family stuff to really accept what my role was in this whole story, um, and kind of figure out how to embrace it. Um, but since I've figured that part out, I've been able to manage my private life and my very public life. Um, because really, when it comes down to for me,
Mhm.
and I put myself out there, even though I'm extremely shy and private. And I don't necessarily like people very much, to be honest. I really don't.
Again, best friends.
Um, I knew the importance for the fans. Without the fans, one, we wouldn't be talking about this stuff.
Right.
I wouldn't have anything to celebrate without the fans, because without the fans, guess what? Without them buying the books and buying the stuff and going to the movies and doing all the things that supports the industry, we wouldn't be having these conversations. So I embraced that fact. I'm here for the fans, and that's it. You want to come and talk to me? I'll come and talk to you. Like, you said you were surprised that I responded, and then I responded quickly.
Yeah.
I don't have time to make people wait. If you want to say hello to me, I'm going to say hello back because I'm a real person. My ego is not bigger than I am. I'm a teacher. I'm a mom. I'm a realist. I don't like to beat around the bush, and I don't like to shun anyone just because I don't know them and they want to say hello to me because of my connection to Batman. I'm not going to do that to the fans. They're the reason why I do the things I do, where I get to go to conventions and have cool interviews with people like yourself and tell Bill's story and talk about my experiences. And I will always appreciate the fans. I will always make time for the fans because that's why we're here. And you know, once I really, really embraced that, I was able to kind of get over that initial shyness and fear that I had. Like, I don't know Batman. I don't read comics. You know, I'm sorry. Yeah. But you know, they didn't care. They didn't care about any of that stuff that I was super worried about. They're like, no, you represent Bill Finger. We love you no matter what. I'm like, okay.
Great. That's all I needed to know. I'm just Bill's face.
But no, I understand the significance of it. I mean, I'm not a celebrity chaser or anything like that, but I understand what it means to people to be able to say, I got to meet so and so. I
It's
mean, I've had a few in my life, okay, where I was like, oh my God.
how I explained it to Dave was it's being able for us, the fans, to in a roundabout way be able to reach out and touch a little bit of Batman's history. And that's a really big deal. You know, you feel like you, in that small way, a fan, get to be a part of the history of the thing that you love so much. It just,
Yeah.
you know, celebrity doesn't impress me. I have my history of telling off celebrities because I refuse to be impressed by someone who's luckier than me. I'm sorry.
Awesome.
And you giving me your line of bullshit doesn't mean I'm going to swallow it.
Exactly.
Okay. It just, no. But I like people. Well,
I
let
like
me rephrase that. Let me rephrase that. I like a person. People are big, dumb, stupid animals. I'm just kidding. On that.
No, I like authentic people.
Yeah. I like individuals. I like history. I love art. I love creativity. I like knowing what drives people. But like I was saying, I love art. I feel like art and comic books, because they're pure art. It's the color of emotion. It's seeing a feeling, something you can't say with words, you can paint or draw, and that emotion comes right through. And if we don't make that legitimate, if we don't respect it, then we're not understanding ourselves. And if we're not understanding ourselves, we're going to make some really big mistakes in other aspects of our lives. And knowing that a great wrong like that was corrected, I think should be taught in school. Art is vital. Art is vital. And stealing art and denying someone's ownership of art is denying them a piece of themselves, a piece of their soul, their child. And it is, to me, one of the most ethically vile things you can do. And you're right on the money that the fans deserve to know where this comes from. They deserve to know who brought them this. It's like, you deserve to know your parents. You deserve to know where you came from.
Right.
Stealing it is just inhuman to me. And for that individual to walk around like a peacock for all those years and write so many things saying that, no, that's not true. And then in retrospect, I wish I could have. You liar. It was you. You were the one who did that. Now, don't say it now that he's gone, because
Yeah, but that's the easy out. Now that he
yeah,
was, passed, he didn't have to actually do anything about it.
it's
Instead
like
of,
admitting without admitting.
at any time. He could have at any time. But again, he made himself the villain. That was his choice. The fans know that he was a shyster, and that he has a horrible reputation in the industry. And anything that he was part of was not authentic, other than his first initial concept of Batman was probably
The
the
name.
only authentic thing
Congratulations.
he ever did. But I'm not here to bash on Bob. Bob actually had a talent that people kind of overlook, and his talent was bringing the right people together
Yes.
to create something that has lasted for almost 85 years. And I mean, yes, there's a lot of people who have come and gone with Batman title, but it was two young men in the Bronx who, came up with this concept. And, Bob was part of that initial concept. And we can't take
And
that
I
away
mean,
from him
really,
either.
all he really would have ever had to say was like, "Look, I was 18 years old, made a mistake."
I was young and I got bad advice.
Yeah, that's all he had to ever say.
But, I
But he
was
didn't.
told from historians that Bob really wanted to be famous. That was his goal. He wanted to be famous. He wanted to be known. He wanted to be, flashy. And he was able to do that with the Batman title. He was able to achieve whatever it is that he wanted to achieve.
I said in my my part 1 of the history of Batman, I said in there, like, he needed money for more ascots and pipes and hair grease. And he got that. He was a showman, like the old carnival.
He was.
Showman. Snowman. That's what they call him.
That's what he wanted, though. Again, everybody had a goal, and his goal was to be famous. And so he achieved that goal. Bill's goal was to tell good stories. And guess what? He did. He told some pretty fantastic stories. So, again, we all had our role. We all made our decision. And, without the opportunity that Bob gave Bill, we wouldn't be talking about Batman. We might be talking about some other character that Bill had nothing to do with, and I wouldn't be here telling this story.
Yeah, I was telling Dave that I said this man has created. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It was a collaboration of creativity between these two men, and I don't want to take that away from Bob, because without the opportunity, we wouldn't have this. We wouldn't.
That's true. I just don't think he was a very nice human, and I will take that
No,
out.
he wasn't. And I will agree with that statement. But again, we don't want to distort the history of what happened
Correct.
because he was a shyster. He did have an important role in the whole story. So as much as we like to hate,
I think the thing that has just that really kind of solidified I don't care for this guy was reading about his idea of Catwoman and how he felt about women. I don't know if you've heard that quote, but he goes on to say that okay, thank you. She brought me my eyeliner back. He goes on to say that he felt like men were more loyal than women. And he's like, I don't understand. Whenever I'm done seeing a woman, once the romance is over, they don't want to be my friend anymore. I'm like, I wonder why that is, Bob.
Why?
He did not have, I won't
He did not have
say
a very good moral code or ethics.
Yeah, his statements about women alone were problematic at best. I'll say that. And I included the whole thing in my Catwoman video because it was just, that's why, oh, Bob.
Yeah.
After that, anytime I would hear him speak, it's just like, no.
Well, Catwoman was the love interest, and that's where that came from what I was told, and whatever Bob wanted to fabricate after that, because Bill came up with Catwoman.
Yes.
So, and it was really to have a love interest for Batman, and that was the whole point. Just like Robin was, so that he had someone to talk to and didn't look like a crazy man having all this inner dialogue.
That makes so much sense. But yes, in my research, Bill created Catwoman to be this love interest, but Bob wanted her to be a distraction because he thought women were distractions.
The first Catwoman story, she kind of is at the end. She totally leaves him hanging, and he's like, "Ooh, I'm intrigued."
Yeah, and he basically says, and I'm paraphrasing, she's too hot to arrest.
Yeah.
Like,
basically,
let her go. And I gotta know, is there any family legend or history as to why it was decided she had that effing terrifying cat head that she wore at first? It's nightmarish.
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, they were probably just trying to figure out how to make her look like a cat woman. So
yeah, it was scary. It was very scary. There's so many questions about that stuff. Like, I'm getting ready to. I've been writing part 2 of my Batman history, the Silver Age, which we got Zebra Batman, we got Rainbow Batman, we got Scottish Batman, we've got Gorilla Batman. It's just
Batman.
I know that
and Bill wrote a lot of that stuff.
Huh?
Bill wrote a lot of that stuff.
I know he did, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, Bill, you're such a creative genius. Where did this stuff come from?" And it came from Jack Schiff, the editor, who was like, "Here's the thing: we're not selling this ground level stuff anymore. It's not going off the shelves like it used to. Kids like space these days. They like space. They like fantasy. So give us some of that." And Jack would say, "Try this." And they're like, "Okay, here you go." Rainbow Batman. I love it. And how exciting. Did you watch Peacemaker at all?
Of course.
Oh my God, yes. Okay.
So good.
Oh God. Okay, I'm obsessed with Peacemaker. I know the whole dance.
I love it.
All down. But when, hey, there's a Peacemaker video and I do the dance.
Oh, my freak out is when Sebastian Bach sent me a tweet.
He is so hot. Is he still hot?
He's an old man now, but yeah, he still has the voice though. I
So
did
my
get to
best
meet
friend,
him a few years ago too, and I gave him a painting for his 50th birthday that I didn't know it was his 50th birthday.
okay, so my best friend and I have
So,
thought he was so hot since we were like this tall.
I
Aren't
know
you
my
gonna
friend
die?
Joanna and I in the 8th grade, we would run around singing 18 in Life at the
18
top of our
life, you
lungs.
got it.
Oh my God.
Her dad used to sing that karaoke.
He's the
um,
nicest guy. He's so nice. He really
oh,
is.
he was on Trailer Park Boys, and it was hilarious. The
Yeah,
little
I
weed
didn't really
train.
follow him after the 8th grade.
Well, I wasn't really exactly following him either. I was just watching Trailer Park Boys. I was like, "Holy shit, it's Sebastian Bach
Yeah, I
filling
didn't
a
get
little
into that
tiny
show.
choo-choo train with weed and sending it from Canada to the United States."
Well, he's a huge pothead, so
Well, luckily now Missouri is a recreational state, and I can publicly say I am too.
oh, okay. Awesome.
But Peacemaker,
Yes,
when he's sitting there and he brings up Batmite,
I
and
know.
you get to see James Gunn, which James Gunn and I are from the same neighborhood. He's
Nice.
wearing a Batmite t-shirt. He's like, "Yes, Batmite is canon." I was like,
Yes. I know. I'm
Peacemaker.
super excited about that.
Thank you, James Gunn.
I think out of the 3 that came out during that time with the Superman, Mr. Whatever, and then, Mr. Kazoo.
Mr.
And,
Mixel-Plixit.
yeah, the one that was on the Flintstones, Mr. Kazoo from outer
Mhm.
space, and then Batmite. I think Batmite was the best one out of those 3.
Because he was a super fan, and it was like he wasn't trying to screw things up all the time. He just wanted. He's like, "I just want to be a part of the team.
Yeah, exactly.
I just really like it."
He was
He's like,
not being
that,
sinister in any way or trying to
no,
sabotage
he's just like that little kid in
anything.
the neighborhood that follows you. Guys, wait, guys. Yeah. It's adorable. Love Batmite. I really hope that they find a way to bring him on the show. That would
be so cool. I would like to see that.
what are your feelings on there actually being DC Studios now, and James Gunn pretty much being he's the creative leader?
I think it's a better direction than what they've done in the last decade. I mean, Christopher Nolan's movies were good, yes. The last Batman movie was good, but it was a little long. Some of these more quote unquote artsy movies that they've been doing with like the Joker movie and even with the last Batman movie, I think that's more of the direction they should be going in because of the type of characters they are. I think that DC Warner Brothers kind of hurt themselves trying to compete with Marvel Disney and what they did. They've never been that way with their characters. Look at the only 2. I mean, okay, now there's a little more, but like you had the Tim Burton first 2 movies that were connected, right? Then you had the one that came out after that. That was Val Kilmer, which I loved the movie. I like
the Bat Nipples.
That was George Clooney after that one.
Oh.
So like even right there, even with that little strip right there, none of those are canon to each other. They might be relevant to something in a book somewhere that someone wrote a story about, but they're not related. And the approach that Marvel took was from day one, they were all going to be connected. So they started right out coming out of the door knowing what direction they were going to go to. So when they brought in Snyder, I understand what they were trying to do, but they totally didn't do it right, unfortunately. And I think that if they treat it more as an independent, right? Think of the independent films that they've done with these characters and how much more significantly good they are compared to what they've tried to do with the whole, let's make it all connected. I didn't like the Snyder verse. there were a couple of things I did like. Like, I really like Ben Affleck as Batman Bruce Wayne. I think he did an amazing job. I think he gets you know, he gets bashed on because the movies were so bad, but they don't look at him. When I look
Mhm.
at it, I look at him and know that he is an amazing actor. And what is he bringing to the character? Like, I hated Christian Bale. I hated him.
Really?
Now, Christopher Nolan's movies, they're okay. They're pretty
Mhm.
good. Like, there's some good stuff coming out of there. My favorite was, of course, The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger. And he's got a beautiful vision with his movies, but I hated Christian Bale as Batman Bruce Wayne. He was too arrogant. He was way too arrogant and a spoiled brat. And the whole Batman raspy voice thing didn't quite
Yeah,
work for me.
that was
Um,
a bit much.
so he wasn't my favorite. My favorites are Michael Keaton. Still is like a huge favorite for me. Ben Affleck definitely makes that list. Even Val Kilmer, I really liked Val Kilmer and what they did with his particular portrayal of the character. Again, if you look at them individually, instead of trying to make this convoluted story that doesn't really exist, it's not going to work and the fans are going to reject it. And that's kind of
And
what's been going on.
I really feel like you've really hit the nail on the head with it. Um, People will ask me, "Oh, are you DC or you Marvel?" And I will always say, "Well, it's comparing apples to oranges. They're two totally different things. They're both comic books, yes, but Marvel has one ambition for their
Mhm.
one goal for their storytelling. DC has another. DC's more morality tales. Marvel is relatability and you know average Joe ambiguity. So when it came to the MCU and the DC EU, it was
Mhm.
like Warner Brothers was like, all right, here's the thing, we're midstream, but we are going to beat them at their own game by changing the rules and doing it differently. And did not work whatsoever because
No.
one, they're two totally different things. And two, they're like 10 years ahead of you at this point, and they
Right.
did it this specific way. You can't just throw it all together and
Yeah,
then
they had a
have Joss
20-year
Whedon come
plan.
in and
They had a 20-year plan.
yeah,
So
way
they
ahead of
knew
you. So
exactly where it was going. And that's
I
why it
think
was
it was a
successful.
genius move to say, hey, James Gunn, what are you doing? Like, give us a hand. And
Well,
he's like,
he's
all
had
right.
some success now. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
Suicide Squad was a huge success.
Yeah.
And Bill's characters are all over that movie. All over it.
Polka Dot Man. I was like, oh my God.
Calendar Man. There's a bunch of characters in there that were his characters. So, funny story. So was invited to the premiere for that one. I was invited to the first Suicide Squad because Batman's in that, and
Mm-hmm.
typically if Batman's in it, then I get to go to the premiere, which is fun. But anyway, so I was invited to the Suicide Squad, and I'm like, but Batman's not in this. And so I'm there with my fiance, and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, it's not even taking place in Gotham. Like, why am I here? And so he's like, well, didn't your grandfather make Polka Dot Man? And I'm like, Google. Oh shit. Yeah. That's why I'm here.
I bet you David Dasmalchian could have educated you on all of that. That is
I didn't get
one.
to talk to any of those people. I tried to introduce myself to James Gunn and he was just too protected. It's hard at those kind of events because they have their little cliques. So I have to try to catch them when they're not in their little circle, which I've been able to do that a few times. Like I got to meet Robert Pattinson because he was just walking across the room and he was by himself. And I'm like, hi, this is who I am. You need to meet me.
I think you should reach out to David Dasmalchian on the guy who played Polka Dot Man. Reach out to him on Instagram. He is a massive comic fan.
All right. Well, I
Massive.
will try to reach out to him.
And
So,
he
I did
is
try to introduce myself to a few of the people there. Again, it's hit or miss. I mean, I could tell you stories, but I don't want to shed bad light on anyone.
we'll talk about that in secret.
um, it's tough not being part of the industry. So people are like, "Who are you? Why are you
Mhm.
here?" And it's
Why
like,
should I be? Why should I care? You're not. I had
it's
I had
like,
someone who will not be named say that. Well, you're not even paying me, so I don't even know why you want me to be on time. Like if you were paying me, I'd be Johnny on the spot. And I was like, okay, I've got like $5 I could cash app you. Will that work? Like,
that's so obnoxious.
yeah, it's really. I'm
Yeah,
not even getting paid. Why should I pay you?
yeah, exactly.
It's stupid. Pay me to be friends or something. Stupid. So, what
So
is
I
your
think I
favorite?
think it's going to be interesting to see what he does with it. Because with Peacemaker and Suicide Squad, he's had huge success. I mean, he's amazing. Anyways, I mean, he's had an amazing career. He had humble beginnings with Trauma and grew into this, amazing director, producer, collaborator, creator, whatever you want to call him. Um, and it's just going to be interesting to see what he does with it.
He
I
knows
mean,
how to stretch a dollar, and I think that's one of the big reasons they went with him because I think Zaslav is going to want to sell DC later studios,
yeah.
and so they're not going to give them a big budget. They're already practically bankrupt, and they're chopping things left and right
Well,
from
yeah,
like
I mean, the
all
whole
the
thing with
CW
the
stuff is
Batgirl
gone.
movie, and then, having to redo Aquaman, and they're still not sure what they're gonna do about Flash and all the
Oh,
money that
the
they
whole
put
world
into it.
is just waiting to see what's going to happen with Ezra Miller. Oh, buddy.
Yeah, but did you ever see the movie We Need to Talk About Kevin?
No, I haven't seen that one, but I have heard that it's
Yeah,
pretty
that's him.
intense.
That's not acting. That's him. Watch that movie. It's really
Okay.
good. It's a good
Is
movie,
it?
but it's him.
I like the only
He's
things I
not.
think I've really seen him in, if it doesn't involve Harry Potter or you know Justice League, I don't know
Yeah,
what else.
no, I mean, he's a good actor, he is,
Mm-hmm.
but he's crazy. He is. And you can see it in this particular movie that it's not necessarily acting for him, that he
It's
is
one of those
not quite right.
situations like once you figure something out, then
Mhm.
you can't look at it the same again.
Exactly. So once you know the mental illness that's behind the story, you're like, "Oh, no
Like
wonder it looks so good when he was acting in that role, because that's very close to home for him, you know?"
we're like the whole world is watching this dumpster fire happen on
It's so
Instagram and everything,
sad.
and we're like, you know where he is.
It's
We know
sad.
where he's in New Hampshire. Look there. Like, go get him help. Stop this.
Yeah.
Just
I don't know.
people with
And then with
money
the whole
need.
Amber Heard thing, I mean, they've just been one PR disaster after another for the last couple of years, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
we'll just have to see how the industry bounce back. Obviously, James Gunn is the right direction. The Batman movie success, obviously in a right direction. People liked it. I know a lot of people didn't like it either, but you know what? It is bringing it back more closer to the roots of what the character is supposed
I
to be.
absolutely agree. That's what I wanted. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about because my favorite Batman stories are always the ones that are closer to how your grandfather wrote him.
Mhm.
What kind of person goes out night after night after night, putting themselves into such danger, risk of physical harm to help
Mm.
people he doesn't even know? No one's paying him to do it. No one's told him to do it. He's doing it. What kind of person does that? It's not someone with a big stupid grin on their face all day, every day. It's not. This person is got dark, serious stuff going on in his head.
Yeah.
And in order to stop guys like this, you're gonna have to beat a few people up and maybe accidentally kick one into a vat of acid. Shit happens.
But no,
But
it's definitely uh more true to the character
it was
direction.
very year one.
With the Joker movie, I was blown away by that particular film. when I came out of that premiere, people were like, "So how was it?" And I'm like, "It is." The first thing I said was, first of all, I'm speechless. Second of all, it is not a comic book movie. Do not go into this expecting to see the Joker, because that's not what you're going to see.
Mhm.
You're not going to see that. This movie has a lot going on behind it, and it has a huge, hopefully, awakening for people who are suffering with mental illness and the way that they are treated in our society. And they're discarded and disregarded and thrown away like pieces of trash. And that's what that movie was all about. And when you treat people like that, they are going to fight back. They're either going to kill themselves or they're going to retaliate. And that's what that story was about. It had nothing to do with comics.
No.
And the one thing I absolutely hated about that movie was that they had to include the whole Bruce Wayne getting, out of the movie with his parents, and we have to live through the scene again. That had nothing to do with that whole movie.
No.
But to get people who are Batman fans in the seats, they felt that they had to do that. And, the meaning behind the movie is going to be destroyed with the sequel. And that's my opinion.
I don't know how I feel about Lady Gaga Harley Quinn. I mean, she's wonderful. She is, but it feels like a distraction.
It's going to diminish the meaning of the first movie.
Yeah.
And they should, if they wanted to do the Joker Harley Quinn love story, they should do a Joker Harley Quinn love story independently of every other film that they've done it in. Because they did the Joker and Harley love story in the first Suicide Squad movie. We watched it all play out with her falling into the vat and the iconic dancing scene with the two of them. We already saw it. It's like, why do they continually beat the horse? It's already been
because
shown.
They're running out of stuff, and they've gotten so wealthy and powerful up there, they've forgotten how to, like, okay, we need to find new stories. All right, these are the three people we normally use. Let's keep talking to them.
Well, and then they're also using the same characters because they only want to use their mainline characters when they have so many characters to choose from. And that's one of the things that I think was successful with the Suicide Squad is that he really did tap into some of these unique, not well-known characters, but can bring so much to the story. I mean, Polka Dot Man. He throws freaking polka dots from his hands, okay? He was like the most beloved character in the whole movie, and everybody got so upset when he died.
He's like a superhero, and then
yes,
and he saw his mom as everything. God bless that actress who did that, because that was just genius. It was fantastic.
But I mean, that's and I mean, whatever. I'm not in charge. I have no say in anything whatsoever. But I don't think they quite understand what to do with the industry because it is so saturated, and they really want to hold on to their moneymakers. But really, they need to start expanding to the plethora of talent and characters that are out there that are starved to be.
I agree. That reminds me of, when I was, kind of jotting things down to talk to you. I was like, Dave, her grandfather has created almost 100 characters. Like 100. He wrote Green Lantern. And he goes, so he doesn't understand. He likes building things. He likes guns. He likes trying to. He would love to live just entirely off the grid, which not having an electric bill sounds nice. But so he's not really well
That's okay.
versed in that stuff at all. Um, but he asked me, he's like, how is it that Bill Finger he passed away by himself and with virtually nothing, and he created all these characters? I'm like, well, you got to understand, this is, as you said, it's a totally different time, and this was still kind of a relatively new medium. And so they were just like, it's kind of like, you don't want to know how the chicken nuggets are made, just bring me some
Right.
chicken nuggets. Just bring me all you can. And so these publishers would farm stuff out all the time and not pay attention to what was happening to the person that was doing all the work for them. They weren't really making
Right.
money off of it. Now we have things in place to stop that from happening again. And it's just,
Well, I mean, we do, but we don't. And the problem with that is that corporations don't have morals and they don't have ethics and they don't have to. They're not required to. And so if they're going to have an opportunity to take advantage of someone, they're going to do it. So
yeah,
really what it comes down to the creator to protect themselves. And that's the part that's missing, is that creative people are focused on creating.
yeah.
They're not focused on business. They're not focused on legal mumbo jumbo stuff that I still don't know anything about because I'm not of that mind. And it's not cheap to get someone to help you with that stuff.
No.
The good thing is that yes, with Kirby and with Bill Finger and other creators who have won their cases against these corporations to get their creator rights back, there's not enough, but there is resources out there for artists who are usually struggling financially. Starving artists is a real thing. To be able to protect them. But there are, and you just have to know where to look for it. There are groups, there's artist councils and free legal advice for creators and things like that, where you can go and get helped with reading a contract or even establishing a contract or how to
And
copyright your stuff and things like
don't
that.
they have like GoFundMe's or some kind of funds out there to help with legal fees?
It depends on the state. They're usually state, individual. The one that I used was in Massachusetts to help me with my case. It was the Artist Council. And I was trying to figure out how I could compile all this information to incorporate in some kind of nonprofit. But all you have to do is Google it and it will come up with a list. I think there was one website where it actually breaks it down by state to see where the resources are. If you're an artist or creator and you need some legal advice or counsel or things like that, they can either help you pro bono or find someone pro bono or give you the resources that they can or whatever.
That's
So
awesome.
that's the part that needs to be pushed more than the responsibility on the corporations, because they don't have a responsibility. They have a responsibility to themselves, and that's it. And so I know, being a creator myself, it's hard to think about that other stuff because it's not what we're wired for. We're wired
Yeah, our
for
minds
doing
don't
something else.
work like that. They don't organize that way.
Right. So I think the conversation should be more empowering to the creators and saying, look, you have rights and you have resources and you don't have to be in this situation that these creators back in the day were put into a situation that, their grandchildren have to fight for them. Like, nobody should have to be in that situation. They should be able to enjoy their creation and anything that comes with it within their lifetime. And so, again, having the artist rights, creators' rights, something that falls upon the creator. I know it's not the greatest thing to say, and we all want to put the responsibility on somebody else, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it's our own responsibility. We created it, and if we want to protect it, that falls upon us. Again, not always knowing where to go. We got Google. Google some,
Thank God.
resources for your particular area. I'm sure there's somebody. And if not, reach out to your local art, whatever. If you have an adult art class that happens in your community center, talk to those people, see what they say. You never know. There might be a lawyer in that class that can help you figure out how to write a contract or go over a contract if you're in the middle of negotiations with somebody. So utilize the community that's there and protect your creation. It's yours. Own it. And that's what it comes down to. Again, these men back in the 40s didn't think that we'd still be talking about this in 2020. Like we're coming close to the 100-year mark, and not, the comics in general have changed in a century almost. So, everyone needs to kind of go with the flow and start taking responsibility. Yes, Bill's story is crappy. What was done to him was real shitty. I know. I lived it. I had to live with it for a long time, okay? But it doesn't have to be that way. Just if you really want something to be your mark in this world, you have to claim it as your own. And unfortunately, you got to use the legal system.
That's perfect. Everything you just said. That's a perfect place to probably wrap it up, because you just brought everything back together and put a little bat-shaped bow on it. It's amazing. You're a pro.
Thanks. I was not always this good.
Me either. Well, Athena, how can people find more out about you?
I'm on social media. I am not so active these days, but I do have a Twitter account just under my name, Athena Finger. I'm on Facebook, so you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram. It's under Athena Finger Real, because my original page got hacked. Those damn hackers took my page. So you can find me there. I actually have a website. You can put in athenafinger.com. I haven't updated the website, but my artwork is there. I post a lot of it on Instagram if you're interested. And seeing some of the painting behind me is one of my pieces that I did for a commission piece several years ago.
You painted that behind you? Oh, it's beautiful.
Thanks. I do commission work, so you can always hit me up. Or if you just want to say hi, like I said, I will say hi back. Might not be a very long conversation, but I will respond. Again, without the fans, I wouldn't be here talking about this stuff. So I love the fans. I have a lot of respect for the fans. So thank you.
I've had an absolutely wonderful time talking with you today. And I look forward to having lunch and martinis one day in the next year.
I want to meet your grandma. I want to pick her brain.
That's done already. I guarantee it. She's already made plans and made you a pot roast. She's pretty decent. She's
okay. I haven't had grandma's cooking in a long time, so
she's the best. She really is. Very lucky. And that's her. But thanks again, guys. If you've enjoyed our conversation, please make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, and you can follow Comics and Cosmetics on all the socials as well, from everything from Twitter to the dreaded TikTok that grates my soul, because it's just, I'm too old to mess with it. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
I don't do any of that stuff. My son tried to get me to do Snapchat like 8 years ago, and I'm like, no.
I tell my kids, I'm like, look, there's something that happens. You turn 40, and there's this switch in your brain that goes, and not only do you not understand the new technology and shit like that, it doesn't understand you either. everything will break, nothing will work right, and you'll have to call your children every 5 minutes. Like, my 14-year-old had to teach me how to use TikTok. I'm like, oh, it does that? That's amazing.
I know
So
nothing
easy.
about TikTok. I know nothing about it.
The only reason why I have it is for the channel, to try and promote that. That's it.
And that's probably why I should probably get on there and promote my artwork. But I'm so bad about promoting myself. So
I know.
I need people like you to promote me.
And in turn, I have someone who supposedly does that for me. I'm like, here you go, here's stuff.
You got one up on me. I got no one.
She's a volunteer. God bless her. Megan, I love you. She asked me when she messaged me out of nowhere. She was like, hey, do you have a social media manager? And I'm like, the what?
What is that? That's a thing?
And she said, well, I volunteer. I'm like, I can't pay you. She goes like, oh, no, you don't have to. Okay.
That's awesome.
Sounds great. So I got someone to post things.
That's why I'm not
me.
very active online.
I don't get on my personal, like I messaged you for my personal Instagram. And I don't really get on there very often, or I don't really get on Facebook anymore because it just feels so negative. You know,
so my feed is all like comic stuff and art stuff. So
you see, my Facebook, I've had it since I was in my 20s, I guess, late 20s. You know, so it's all the people that I've known since then, and they're all like arguing politics, and I'm like,
yeah, no, I'm pretty fortunate that I don't get too much of that. They've kind of all left me alone with that, because when Trump was running the first time, it just caused all kinds of problems, and I wasn't on either side, and I was just trying to promote peace. And I got so much shit for promoting peace.
I know.
And I'm like,
it's like they don't know what to do with you if you're in the middle. Like, I think that they're all just after your money and your power. None of them give a shit about you.
No, they don't.
So why should I?
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Like it's not even a government anymore. It's a reality show. I'm taking myself out of the equation. So and they get so offended. I just don't understand it.
I don't know how we got into this I'm offended by breathing mentality.
I don't know either. And I grew up a crippled kid in a black neighborhood. And if I got offended all the time, I would not have survived.
Yeah.
At all. That would not have worked for me. But my Twitter feed is pretty much just nerdy stuff. And that's if I'm social media-ing, that's pretty much where I'm doing it. My little happy nerd haven.
There you go.
But with that, nerdlings, thanks for stopping by. Have a wizard day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.